The day before his sister died, Aiden Maris found a photograph of her he didn't take. It lay on his kitchen table when he came back from a late shift, face down, edges still damp with chemicals. He flipped it over and stared at a picture that hadn't happened yet. Maya, red scarf, laughing on the footbridge near Harbor Street, one hand raised and the other clutching a coffee. The timestamp stamped itself in that ugly digital orange at the bottom, Tuesday 1912. It was Monday, 1:43 a.m. He checked the lock, checked the windows, checked his breathing. He called Maya. It rang out. He texted, "Did you stop by? Did you leave a print?" She replied 10 minutes later with a string of question marks and what print. Aiden sent a photo of the photo. Maya wrote, "LOL great deep fake," and added a moon emoji that tried too hard. At 1912 on Tuesday, Aiden walked to the footbridge and watched his sister laugh exactly like the picture said she would. When she saw him, she lifted her hand in the same hello, surprised, delighted. He stood there, the future finally caught up to him and no idea what that meant. 3 hours later she was gone, and the photo on the table went stiff as proof. When Aiden finally slept, the image lurked on the back of his eyelids like an afterimage from a welding torch. In the morning, a box waited on his doormat, battered brown, duct tape holding the corners like stubbornness. Inside lay a Polaroid land camera 180, the old kind that drank light in hunks and spat it back as squares. Fresh peel-apart film in a cold pack that shouldn't have been cold. A lens cap wrapped in tissue that smelled faintly of pond water. Beneath it, a typed card, misaligned letters like a ransom note in polite font. Point, press, pull. Develops, tomorrow. Price, see terms. The terms were a single line at the bottom. Do not photograph your own face. Aiden had handled cameras for half his remembered life, rental mirrorless, borrowed DSLRs, a thrifted Canon AE1 with a shutter he swore had a conscience. He didn't believe in haunted objects. He believed in habits: check battery, check card, check lens, check light. He also believed in proof. The photo of Maya was proof of something, a glitch, a prank with timing as a weapon, or a machine that printed the future like other cameras printed birthdays. He loaded the Land 180 with a strip of peel-apart film, hands remembering motions he'd never learned. The back closed with a click that had the weight of locks. He turned the camera toward his ugly kitchen clock, the one with paint flecks on the glass and a hairline crack at the 6. The light meter needle twitched, then held. He pressed the shutter. The camera thudded. Point. Press. Pull. He pulled the tab. The packet slid out, wet chemicals between paper layers, familiar to anyone who'd ever fallen in love with the way an image makes itself. He set it on the table and glanced at the typed card, "Develops, tomorrow." He laughed once, short. Then he waited, because that is what grief teaches you, how to sit with something until it declares itself. 20 minutes later, the paper was still blank. 20 hours later, at the exact second the kitchen clock moved from 10:31 to 10:32 the next day, the image forced itself from the white, the clock, yes, but the minute hand a notch further on than it had been when he pressed the shutter, a fly at the rim that wouldn't land until Tuesday, a hair he'd shed he hadn't yet shed. The timestamp burned at the bottom, Wednesday 10:32. Tomorrow. His stomach went cold in a way coffee couldn't fix. He took 3 more, his empty couch, which the next day held a pizza box he didn't yet plan to order, the view from his window, with rain beginning that wouldn't fall until the following afternoon, his own front door, with a flyer tucked under the doormat for a locksmith he wouldn't meet until Thursday. He read the rule again. Do not photograph your own face. He did not. He took the camera to the footbridge where Maya had laughed her last daylight laugh. He shot the rail, the pattern the light made on the planks, the greasy water, the gull that had refused to change direction. He shot because the only thing that stopped the panic from swallowing him was the tiny click that said you made a choice and this is what it sounds like. That night he dreamed the camera climbed onto his chest like a cat and breathed for him. In the morning there were 4 new photos on the table he did not remember taking. All of them stamped FRI, all of them showing the same corner grocery with the shutter bent like a smile, and an ambulance he hadn't yet earned. At 11:14 on Friday, the groceries window shattered in a fight that spilled from behind the lottery machine. Aiden stood across the street with his hands in his pockets and the memory of foam chemicals on his fingers. He went home and packed the camera in a pillowcase and put the pillowcase in the freezer. At 2:17, the freezer hummed a note he'd never heard it make before. The next morning the camera waited on the kitchen table, thawed, and beside it lay a new photo dated Saturday 2/17, a freezer door ajar, frost smudged into shapes like finger marks spelling an O. He put the camera in the car trunk and drove. When he pulled off on a logging road outside the city, the trunk latch had already let itself go. The camera sat in the back seat with the greasy patience of a stray. The typed card lay on the upholstery beside it. One more line had appeared in the same polite misaligned font. "You're not the first." He found her through the only work he still took, event shoots for people who wanted to remember they existed. At a women's center gala under rented uplights and rented platitudes, Aiden watched a middle-aged woman hover near the back table of silent auction items, touching nothing and reading everything. She wore secondhand black like it had been tailored for her anyway. Her hair was the color expensive salons sell as ash if you ask for something that knows the word restraint. When he lifted his rental mirrorless for the standard room-wide crowd shot, she glanced up and flinched like someone touched unexpectedly. Later, in the kitchen where the staff ate the food no one wanted and the good plates weren't allowed to go, she stood by the back door smoking a cigarette with the kind of focus you usually reserve for cutting your own hair. "Do you like being seen?" Aiden asked, which was either a terrible or a perfect icebreaker. She smiled without moving her mouth. "Not by the wrong eyes." He held up his camera. "I can make you disappear in 6 clicks." She gestured with her cigarette. "You already did." He looked down at the preview screen. She wasn't there. The wide shot didn't include her. Neither did the candid of the auction table where he'd definitely seen her reading a description of a weekend getaway like it was a test. Even the backdoor shot, empty air where a woman should be, ash in mid-fall with no hand above it. "You see me," she said. "Your little future thief, though." "It won't." Blood bright with adrenaline thudded in his ears. "How do you?" "Because I was you before I learned to stop making the same mistake," she said. She flicked the cigarette into a bucket with perfect economy. "Don't shoot faces. Don't shoot mirrors. Don't shoot screens. For God's sake, don't shoot glass. And don't shoot me, because it'll eat your tomorrow and I prefer you alive enough to bring me what I asked for." He should have left. He did not. "What did you ask for?" She handed him a business card that wasn't. Heavy, bone-colored paper. A single line embossed without ink. Sable Wick. No number. No address. No phrase like consultant or seer. Just a name that felt like it had already met you in a story you had forgotten. "How do I find you?" he asked. "You already did." She exhaled a last rib of smoke. "When it shows you what you don't survive, call me." "I'm not." "Everyone thinks that until the print sticks to their fingers," she said. "Keep your film in a dark pocket. For now, take pictures of rooms. Of corners. Of doors. If it wants a face, make it beg." He wanted to ask 10 better questions. He said, "Sable, how do you pay the price?" She looked at him like a teacher looks at a student the day the exam turns into a conversation. "You don't. Not with money. You pay with order. It wants yours. It will unmake you by small degrees. If you owe time a debt, it will collect in seconds. If you owe somebody grief, it will ask for the remainder plus interest." He looked down at his hands. The skin across his knuckles had dried with winter. He imagined the camera licking that dryness into cracks. "How long have you been avoiding lenses?" he asked. She smiled without letting him see her teeth. "Long enough that most mirrors lie nicely." When he glanced back at the door to say thank you, she wasn't there. The ash in the bucket spelled nothing at all. He tested rules until the rules tested back. Photograph a door today, tomorrow the image shows it open with the light you won't turn on. Shoot the stairwell, tomorrow it shows a shadow on the fourth step that your feet will consent to make. Shoot the skyline, tomorrow a window is broken on the 14th floor and a white curtain breathes like a person who doesn't agree with CPR. Every picture arrived with a timestamp, and every timestamp happened, in small obedient ways. A bus stalled at 8:43 blocking traffic exactly where the print said it would, a dog dropping a yellow tennis ball in the exact smudge of spilled ketchup outside the diner at 12:06, a man in a blue jacket missing the elevator and swearing at 17:19. It wanted to be right. It wanted him to help. He kept the Land 180 in a canvas messenger bag that had been his father's and smelled vaguely of tin. He took to wearing a scarf to cover the lower half of his face and reflective surfaces. He angled his phone like a superstitious actor who thinks cameras steal seconds. For a week, the camera behaved like a circus animal that knows tricks. It brought him small tomorrows. Then it brought him Maya again. Sunday 3:12. The photo showed his kitchen, dark, and the camera on the table. Behind the camera, in the hallway, his sister's silhouette. Head tilted. The way she did when she was about to say his name in a tone that meant "don't lie to me." He didn't sleep that night in the kitchen with the lights on and the camera face down under a dish towel. At 3:12, the hallway remained a hallway. No silhouette. No breath. Only the refrigerator compressor doing its half-hearted job. At 3:18, though, the lights flickered. The camera's shutter clicked. He didn't press it. He lifted the towel. A new photograph warmed his fingers. His living room, Monday 1901, his mother's coat on the chair she said she would never sit in again. He called Sable. "You let it in your house," she said, with a kind of pity that made him want to punch drywall. "You let it name a room." "I didn't." "You did when you printed it." Pictures count as labels. Labels are doors. It'll start moving your furniture and your grief around until you can't find anything without an index. How do I stop it? You don't. A beat. You starve it. That's different. How? Tomorrow, she said, don't do what it says. It doesn't say. It shows. Same thing. She hung up. He did not do what it said. At 1901, he did not let his mother in. She texted from outside, "Street light out by your place, can I sit a minute?" He turned on every light in the house and sat on the floor and sweated and watched the door and hated himself with a professional's technique. At 1911, the camera whirred in protest like a stomach trained on a particular hour. At 1913, the living room window reflected back a face that was not his. Not the camera's. Not anyone's he wanted to know. He closed the curtains the way people close arguments. The next morning, a new print lay on the table. Tuesday 2/17. The freezer door ajar again, frost writing "eat." He held the peel-apart paper too long and burned his fingertips. Under the kitchen light, the letters looked like LEAT, and he thought of a word from a class he failed in college, latency. He realized the camera was changing the way he read. That afternoon, he photographed the mirror above the bathroom sink and waited, breath high in the chest, for the consequence. The typed card had said don't. He wanted to know who wanted him to obey. The next day the photo developed to show no mirror at all, just tile and a blank painted wall. In the right edge of the frame, a hand held a brush loaded with paint, white and wet. His own brush. His hand. At 14:06, he found himself standing in the bathroom with a paint can open on the floor and a line of wet white where a mirror had hung an hour earlier. He had no recollection of taking it down. He stared at the brush and discovered the alarming fact that his wrist didn't ache. Either his body had helped him or he had helped the camera. He laughed wrong, wiped his face on his sleeve, and realized his sleeve smelled like solvent and not like him. When he called Sable again, she didn't pick up. That evening, the camera spit out a picture he didn't remember shooting, a woman in a red winter coat walking into the old ferry terminal at 21:55. The timestamp, Thursday 21:55. The woman's face turned slightly away as if someone had said her name. The woman was not Maya, but Aiden's stomach did the thing it had learned to do the day before funerals. He checked the ferry schedule out of habit and discovered what he didn't expect: the terminal was demolished 3 years ago. The next day, at 21:55, a woman in a red coat walked through a gap in a hurricane fence at the site where the terminal had been and disappeared into what looked like a maintenance hallway that should have been bare concrete. Aiden ran after her, camera bag in hand, and discovered a door that did not exist until you insisted. The photo in his pocket warmed like a heartbeat. Inside smelled like Tide and grease and lost coins. A corridor led to a room that had been a waiting area in the century when ships were the most honest way to leave. There were still benches. There were still departure boards, unpowered and accusing. There were still 3 ticket windows, the glass covered in scratches that mapped the patience of 1,000 thumbs. There was also a woman in a red coat who turned as Aiden entered and said, "You're late," like they had made an appointment. "I don't know you," he said. "You will." She tilted her head. "Or you did. Or you choose not to. Are you at Sable?" "I'm with the camera," she said. "For now." "What does it want?" The question came out like a plea in an invoice. She smiled without using the top half of her face. "Consistency. It feeds on will that becomes act. That's why it prints tomorrow. It wants the world to develop the way it says. And if it doesn't?" She nodded toward a pegboard of lost property, gloves, hats, a child's painted drum with only one stick. In the corner near the floor, where floodwater stains ended, a cluster of photographs had been pinned. All showed rooms without people. Kitchens without knives. Beds without blankets. Stairways without 4th steps. "It edits," she said. He stepped closer to the board and saw, in the lower right, his own kitchen with the refrigerator door open and that stupid mug that said "World's okayest whatever," and no camera on the table. No table. Just floor. Just him not living there at all. He turned around too fast. The room tilted. "I never took that." "You will if it wants you to," she said. "Unless you give it something it prefers." "What would it prefer?" She looked at his bag. "Faces." He touched the strap like an apology. "I don't shoot faces." "You will." She reached out and smoothed the sleeve of his jacket with a tenderness that felt like contempt. "Everyone does. It writes it into your habits." "Who are you?" "Porter," she said, as if that were a job and a name. "I carry tomorrows for people who don't have pockets." "I thought you were with the camera." She shook her head. "I'm with whoever wins." "What's the price?" he asked, harsh. The card said "See terms." "I don't see them." "You pay in things that would have happened if you hadn't known better," Porter said. "In the untouched version of you. In versions of your sister that call you back when you're trying to leave the house. In minor futures. In seconds. I don't have any to spare." She smiled like he had been cute and didn't know it. "You will." "How do I stop the edits?" "You don't. You choose different ones." Her eyes softened for the first time. "Or you starve it. But you won't. Not with a grief like yours. Not with a world like this." He wanted to prove her wrong with a scale model of the future. He wanted to hurl the camera into the bay and measure what left him with it. He asked instead, "What happens if I photograph my own face?" She said nothing for 3 ticks of the most patient clock in the city. "Then, it develops a tomorrow in which you agree with it about who you are." She tipped her chin at the bag. "You won't like its version. Most people don't." "Has anyone liked it?" "One," she said. "He was very boring and lived forever." Something metal clanged deep in the terminal, the sound of a gate unshouldering itself. Porter backed away. "Don't shoot the mirrors," she said. "Don't shoot screens. And if you shoot glass, clean up what you break." "What do I shoot?" "The thing it can't print," she said, and disappeared behind the ticket window in a way that required track lighting and choreography or else meant the world had agreed to be helpful. Aiden stood alone in a room that had been tomorrow's for other people and listened for the sound a camera makes when it decides you belong. In his pocket, the photo of the red-coated woman cooled. On the wall, one of the pinned photographs, his kitchen without him, fluttered in a breath of tide and settled a half-inch lower, closer to where his eyes would fall if he looked back. He didn't. He walked out into a night with no ferry to catch and a rule he could keep only until morning. By Thursday morning, Aiden had stopped checking the clock. The photos arrived whether or not he expected them, each one a nudge towards something small and inevitable. A glass tipping over. A door swinging shut. A face seen twice where there should have been one. He stopped fighting the small ones and only feared the silence between them. That silence broke when the camera took a photo on its own. He woke to the click, the mechanical cough of the shutter. The room was dark, the curtains still drawn. He didn't touch it until sunrise, and when he did, the photo was still damp and reeking of developer. It showed him, asleep, head turned toward the camera. The timestamp read Friday 3:41. He sat up, staring at the print until it dried. The light fell through the blinds exactly as in the picture. He was already living inside it. By 3:41 that night, his body betrayed him, his eyes closed, breath slowing, as though obeying choreography he hadn't consented to. He fought it. He stayed awake until 3:42. But in the morning, his phone showed a video, himself, asleep at 3:41, recorded from the shelf across the room. He hadn't set up a camera. He tore every photo off his walls and shoved the Polaroid back in its case. When the film ran out, he felt relief, for 10 minutes. Then he found a new pack sitting neatly on his doorstep. Same brand. Same cold feel. No label this time, just a handwritten note in pencil. You took someone's turn. Develop it. The next photo he pulled showed a man's hands, scarred and older, adjusting the camera strap in a mirror. His reflection's mouth was open mid-laugh. The timestamp, Saturday 11:02. He recognized the hands only when he saw the scar across the left thumb. It was his father's. Sable finally answered at 11:03. You said not to shoot mirrors, Aiden said, voice shaking. But it did. It doesn't need you to press the button anymore, she said. Once it's eaten enough of your days, it learns the rhythm of your life. It can guess your tomorrows. Why me? Because you open with grief. It prefers an entry wound. He turned the photo over. There was something written on the back now, faint, raised from beneath the paper like embossed braille. Don't forget to smile. What happens if I break it? You can't break what thinks in negatives, Sable said. It'll just print the version where you didn't. Then how do I end it? Silence. Then, carefully, there's one picture it can't take. What? The moment you decide not to have one. He hung up before she could explain. He packed a duffel, took the Polaroid, and drove until the city fell behind. He stopped at an old quarry that had become a black lake, the kind that swallows sound. The air smelled of stone and algae and time refusing to move forward. He aimed the camera at the water, not pressing the shutter, just holding it there like a gun that had learned patience. He said aloud, You don't get this. The camera clicked anyway. The photo developed almost instantly, faster than ever. It showed the lake, yes, but with ripples spreading outward from the center. In the reflection, a man standing on the far shore. The timestamp, Sunday 3:17. Aiden turned toward the opposite bank. No one. No light. Just the suggestion that something had already walked away. He threw the camera into the water. It didn't sink. It floated, lens up, like an eye refusing to close. When he got home, dripping and furious, the camera sat waiting on the kitchen counter, bone dry, with another photo beside it. It showed him at the quarry, throwing the camera. The caption written in the margin in his own handwriting. Nice try. Time began to misbehave. Minutes repeated. Coffee cooled faster than poured. Every reflection came a beat too late. His neighbor's dog barked before thunder. He counted the delay between cause and effect, 3 seconds. Then 5. Then 10. The world lagged behind him like a buffering screen. At 18:02 one evening, he received a text from Sable. "You're being unthreaded." Define that. It's unwinding your timeline. Every picture it ever took, it's keeping a version of you there. He opened a shoebox full of old Polaroids, kitchens, bridges, strangers, skies. They were all changing. In the photos, he was fading. Shadows where his body used to be. His outline replaced by something else, sometimes light, sometimes nothing. He flipped one over. On the back, "Don't starve it. Feed it differently." "What does that mean?" he whispered. A voice from the hallway answered, his own voice, speaking softly, mockingly, "Take the picture." He turned. His reflection in the dark TV screen stared back, holding the camera. "You're not me," Aiden said. "I'm you tomorrow," the reflection said. "I like the light better here." And then the shutter clicked. He woke the next morning on the floor, surrounded by prints, hundreds of them, spreading like mold. Every surface in the apartment was covered in scenes from different versions of his life. Him standing on a beach he'd never seen. Him in a hospital room. Him shaking hands with strangers. Him smiling, always smiling. The last photo to develop was still wet. It showed his kitchen, empty, with the camera gone. The timestamp, MON midnight. He checked the clock. 11:59 p.m. He realized what it meant. If he could live through this minute, one unphotographed, unrecorded, unwitnessed minute, he might break it. He unplugged every light. He turned off his phone. He sat in the dark, eyes closed, heartbeat steady. The apartment held its breath. Midnight came and went. No click. No hum. No print. When he opened his eyes, the table was empty. The camera was gone. Outside, dawn arrived half a second early. He smiled for the first time in months. Then he looked at the wall above the sink. A new Polaroid had developed there, stuck like a wet leaf. It showed him sitting exactly where he was, eyes closed. Timestamp, TUE midnight. And beneath it, written faintly in the margin. Develops, tomorrow. Weeks later, a collector found a box at an estate sale. Inside, a vintage Polaroid Land 180, perfectly preserved. A stack of photos. A typed card, yellowed with age. Point, press, pull. Develops, tomorrow. Price, see terms. At the bottom, a new line in misaligned letters. Sold as is.